Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been living in this apartment complex for 3 years now. It's nothing fancy, just a typical two-story building with about 12 units and limited street parking. When I first moved in, I was fresh out of college and working entry-level at a marketing firm downtown. The rent was cheap enough that I could afford it on my own, which was important to me after having terrible roommate experiences in college. The parking situation here has always been first come, first served. There are no assigned spots, but over time people tend to develop routines. I work regular 9 to 5 hours, so I usually get home around 6 and park in the same general area, right in front of my building. It's convenient, and since I've been here longer than most of the other tenants, it feels like my unofficial spot. About 6 months ago, this woman moved into the unit directly across from mine on the second floor. She seemed normal enough at first, quiet, kept to herself. I'd see her coming and going at odd hours, but I figured she worked some kind of shift job. We'd exchange polite nods in the hallway. Nothing more. Then her boyfriend started showing up. This guy drove this massive pickup truck that he'd park wherever he pleased, sometimes taking up 2 spots or parking so close to other cars that people could barely get out. I noticed he'd leave his truck there for days at a time, even when she wasn't home. It was annoying, but I minded my own business. Last Tuesday was rough at work. Our biggest client had rejected a campaign we've been working on for weeks, and my boss blamed our entire team for not reading their mind about what they wanted. I stayed late trying to salvage what I could, and by the time I got home around 8:30 p.m., I was completely drained. All I wanted was to grab some leftover pizza, watch something mindless on Netflix, and go to bed early. I pulled into my usual spot right in front of the building, grabbed my work bag, and was halfway to the front door when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around to see her walking toward me with this expectant look on her face. She asked me to excuse her for a moment, then made the most ridiculous request I'd ever heard. She wanted me to park farther down the street so her boyfriend could have my spot because he hated walking. I left because I thought she had to be kidding. The request was so absurd that my brain couldn't process it at first. I asked her what she meant, thinking I'd misunderstood, but she just stood there, with her arms crossed, waiting for my answer like she'd asked me to borrow a cup of sugar. She explained that her boyfriend didn't like having to walk from way down the street and that my spot was closer to the building. I told her that I lived here and wasn't going to move my car so her boyfriend didn't have to walk a few extra steps. Her whole expression changed. She looked at me like I'd just told her I wouldn't help her carry groceries up the stairs. She asked if I was being serious and said it wasn't that big of a deal since he was there all the time anyway. I pointed out that was exactly the problem. He was there all the time but didn't live here. I did. I paid rent here and had been parking in this area for 3 years. She called me selfish and said it was just a parking spot. I told her if it was just a parking spot, then he could park in any of the other ones. She shook her head like I was being unreasonable. She said fine, but told me not to expect any favors from her. She walked back toward the building and I just stood there for a minute trying to process what had just happened. What favors was she talking about? We barely knew each other. I went inside and tried to forget about it, but the whole interaction kept bugging me. The sheer audacity of asking someone to move their car from public parking just so her boyfriend could have a more convenient spot was beyond anything I'd experienced. The next morning I left for work at my usual time and noticed her boyfriend's truck parked in the spot I'd been in the night before. When I got home that evening, he was still there and she was waiting by my car. She pointed out that he was using that spot anyway and said I could have just parked down the street yesterday. I explained that he could park there when I wasn't there, but that's how parking worked. She asked if I was going to make this difficult, and I told her I wasn't making anything difficult. I was just parking in legal spots on a public street. She walked away saying something about uptight neighbors. This went on for about a week. Every few days she'd make some comment about the parking situation, acting like I was the problem. Her boyfriend would park in my usual spot whenever I wasn't there, but I'd take it back when I got home from work. Then last Friday, things escalated. I came home to find a note on my windshield written in her handwriting that said other people lived here too and I should stop being selfish about parking. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I went upstairs and knocked on her door. When she answered, I asked if she had put the note on my car. She admitted she had and said maybe now I'd think about other people. I asked what other people she meant, her boyfriend who didn't live here and didn't pay rent here. She said he practically lived there and they were practically married. I told her that practically didn't get her assigned parking spots. She got angry and said she was calling the property manager about this. I told her to go ahead and ask them about the parking policy because I thought she'd find it was first come, first served for residents. She slammed the door in my face. Monday morning, I got a call from the property management company. She had called them over the weekend to complain about me hoarding parking spots and being hostile to other tenants. The manager asked me to explain my side of the story. I told him everything. How she'd asked me to move my car for her boyfriend's convenience, how she'd been leaving notes on my windshield, and how her boyfriend was living there without being on the lease. The property manager seemed surprised and asked if her boyfriend was really staying there full-time without being on the lease. I told him his truck was there almost every night and she had said he practically lived there. The manager explained that was a lease violation. Guests could stay for up to a week, but anyone staying longer needed to be added to the lease or she needed to notify them. I said I didn't know that was even a rule. The manager confirmed it was and said that regarding parking I was right. It was first come, first served for residents and their registered guests only. By Wednesday, there was a notice on her door about lease violations and unauthorized occupants. Her boyfriend's truck disappeared for about a week. When it came back, it was only there occasionally, and he never parked in my usual spot again. She still gives me dirty looks in the hallway, but she hasn't said anything else about parking. I've been a police officer for 12 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything. But nothing prepared me for what happened at our local community pool last Saturday afternoon. My wife and I had taken our 2 kids to the pool for some family time. It was one of those rare weekends when I wasn't on duty, and we were looking forward to just relaxing and watching the kids splash around. The pool was pretty busy that day. Lots of families enjoying the warm weather, kids playing water games, the usual weekend crowd. I was sitting in a lounge chair reading a book while my wife was helping our youngest with her swimming when I heard this woman's voice getting louder and more aggressive near the pool area. At first, I tried to ignore it. I was off duty after all and wanted to enjoy my family time. But the voice kept getting more demanding and I could see other families starting to look uncomfortable. That's when my training kicked in. You can't really turn off the cop instincts even on your day off. I looked over and saw this woman, probably in her 40s, standing near the shallow end of the pool. She had this entitled posture, hands on her hips, and was arguing with a teenage lifeguard. There was a boy next to her, maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing goggles and holding a kickboard. The woman was yelling at the lifeguard about how ridiculous the situation was. She demanded that her son needed to practice his laps properly because he had a swimming championship coming up next week. The lifeguard, poor kid, tried explaining that he couldn't ask everyone to leave the pool since this was a public facility, but she wasn't having any of it. She went on about how much money they had spent on her son's training and how he was going to lose because of all the people splashing around and getting in his way. The lifeguard looked like he was maybe 17 and was in over his head dealing with this situation. Other parents were starting to gather around, and I could see the tension building. One of the other parents spoke up, telling the woman that there were plenty of other kids who wanted to swim too, and that her child wasn't more important than everyone else's kids. That's when things took a very dark turn. This woman reached into her bag and pulled out what I immediately recognized as a stun gun. My blood ran cold. She held the stun gun up high and announced that maybe people would change their attitude when they saw how serious she was about this whole thing. She waved it around so everyone could see it. The electrical crackling sound it made when she activated it sent people scrambling. The woman then made her threat clear. She wanted half the pool cleared out in the next 5 minutes, or she was going to make sure nobody got to swim that day. She threatened to throw the stun gun right into the water so everyone could see how they liked getting electrocuted. Panic erupted immediately. Parents were grabbing their kids, people were screaming, and everyone was trying to get out of the pool as fast as possible. The lifeguard had gone pale and was backing away from her. My wife looked at me with that expression I knew well, the one that said, "Do something." I caught her eye and quietly told her to call 911 while gesturing toward my phone. She nodded and quickly started dialing while keeping our kids close to her. I've been in plenty of dangerous situations before, but this was different because my own family was here. This woman was threatening not just strangers, but my wife and children too. The mama bear instinct kicked in hard. I started moving slowly around the pool area, staying low and using the crowd as cover. The woman was so focused on waving her stun gun around and shouting threats that she didn't notice me positioning myself behind her. She kept screaming that she wasn't kidding around and that her son deserved this pool time and she was going to make sure he got it. She demanded that everyone needed to get out right now. One of the parents called her crazy and said she couldn't threaten people like this, but she just yelled back that they should watch her because she would fry every single one of them if she had to. That was it. I couldn't wait any longer. In one quick motion, I came up behind her and struck her wrist hard, sending the stun gun flying into the pool deck where it skittered away from everyone. Before she could react, I had her on the ground and was using my body weight to keep her pinned down. I announced that I was police and ordered her to stay down and not move. She started screaming at me to get off her, saying I couldn't do this and that she had rights. She kept insisting that her son needed to practice. I told her that she had just threatened a pool full of families with a weapon and that she was under arrest. She kept screaming and struggling, but I had her secured. The crowd that had scattered was now gathering again, and I could hear people expressing relief and asking if everyone was okay. One parent thanked God and said the woman was insane. Another asked if anyone had gotten hurt. My wife had gotten through to 911 and was giving them our location. Within about 10 minutes, I could hear the sirens approaching. Two of my colleagues from the department arrived and took over the arrest. One of the officers joked that I was the day-off hero who couldn't stay out of trouble even when I wasn't working. I told him that I would have preferred to just read my book and watch the kids swim. When they were putting her in the back of the patrol car, she was still screaming about harassment and how her son had every right to practice. She yelled that we people had ruined everything and that she was going to sue all of us. The officer told her that threatening people with a weapon was a felony and that her son could practice swimming, but not by terrorizing families. I found out later that there was no swimming championship. Other parents at the pool knew the woman's son from school, and apparently she had made up the story about some competition. She just wanted the pool to herself because she thought her kid was too good to swim with the common children. The woman ended up being charged with aggravated assault, making terroristic threats, and endangering the welfare of children. The stun gun was illegal for her to carry anyway, since she had a previous conviction for assault that I learned about later. My wife just shook her head and said she should have known that even our family pool days would end up with me tackling someone. Karen's son, poor kid, ended up joining the local swim team at the YMCA, where he actually got proper coaching instead of having his mother threaten people with weapons. I moved to this country 5 years ago to start my veterinary practice. Back home I had worked at a large animal hospital, but here I wanted something smaller and more personal. Setting up my own clinic was tough at first. I had to learn new regulations, build relationships with suppliers, and most importantly, figure out how to communicate complex medical procedures to pet owners who weren't always native speakers themselves. That's when I discovered my secret weapon at the local furniture store. It was just a simple stuffed dog toy, nothing fancy. Brown and white fur, floppy ears, about the size of a small terrier. Cost me maybe $15. But this little guy became the most valuable tool in my practice. I use him for everything. When I need to show an owner where their dog's injury is located, I point it out on the toy. When I'm explaining how to give medication, I demonstrate on him first. Parents bringing in their puppies for the first time love when I show them proper handling techniques using my demonstration dog. He's been poked with countless fake needles, had his temperature taken more times than I can count, and been the subject of hundreds of mini anatomy lessons. The toy lives on the counter in my examination room where everyone can see him. He's gotten a bit worn over the years. His fur isn't as fluffy as it once was, and there's a small stain on his back from when a nervous puppy had an accident during a visit. But he's clean and functional, which is all that matters for his job. Sometimes when I have a particularly well-behaved young dog in for a visit, I'll let them play with the toy while their owner and I discuss treatment plans. It keeps the puppies calm and gives the parents a chance to focus on what I'm telling them. Of course, I always clean him thoroughly afterward. Last Tuesday started like any other day. My afternoon appointment was a routine annual checkup for a 3-year-old orange tabby cat. The owner had scheduled online, so I didn't know much about them beforehand except that this was their first visit to my clinic. When they arrived, I could see the family through my window. A woman in her 40s with perfectly styled blonde hair, accompanied by her daughter who looked to be around 8 years old. The little girl was carrying a pet carrier with what I assumed was their cat inside. I opened the door to greet them and immediately noticed the daughter's eyes lock onto my demonstration dog sitting on the counter. The little girl gasped with excitement and started gushing about how adorable the puppy was and how much she would love him if he could be hers. Her mother quickly joined in, agreeing that he really was precious. The appointment started normally enough. Their cat, a beautiful orange tabby, was healthy and cooperative during the examination. I went through the standard checkup routine while the mother asked appropriate questions about diet and exercise. But I noticed both she and her daughter kept looking at my teaching tool throughout our conversation. About halfway through the appointment, the daughter's comments started getting more pointed. She mentioned how lonely the puppy looked sitting there all by himself, and suggested that he probably wished he had a little girl to love him and take care of him. I continued focusing on the cat, pretending not to catch the hint. The mother jumped in to support her daughter's campaign. She told me how much her daughter loved stuffed animals and how she took such good care of all her toys. She emphasized that her daughter was very responsible for her age. The daughter continued her pitch, explaining how she would brush his fur every single day and make sure he never got dirty. She painted a picture of how he would sleep in her bed and she would read him stories. The hints became increasingly obvious when the appointment continued. They spent a solid 5 minutes tag teaming their subtle requests, each comment designed to make me feel guilty for not offering to give away my work tool. The mother started talking about how nice it was when children had special toys that meant something to them. She suggested that this little guy obviously had a lot of love to give. The daughter wondered aloud if he got scared here all alone at night when the clinic was closed. She assured me that at their house he would never be alone. The mother then said they had been looking everywhere for a dog just like this one, but that stores didn't make them the same way anymore. This was clearly untrue since I had bought the toy recently at a very common furniture store, but I maintained my blank expression and continued with the examination. The daughter suggested that maybe the puppy would be happier living with a family instead of staying at work all the time. Her mother agreed, saying that some toys were just meant to be loved by children, and asked if I didn't think so too. I finished the cat's examination and began preparing the vaccination records. The mother and daughter exchanged looks, clearly frustrated that their campaign wasn't working. The mother then told me she couldn't help noticing how much her daughter had bonded with my little friend. She said her daughter had such a gift with animals and toys. I replied in a neutral tone that he was indeed a good demonstration tool and very helpful for explaining procedures to pet owners. The daughter asked if he wouldn't rather be played with than just used for work stuff. Her mother suggested that children needed companions and toys needed children to love them. She said it seemed like such a perfect match. The daughter tried a different approach, walking closer to the counter where my teaching tool sat. She spoke directly to the toy, asking if he wanted to come home with her and promising she would take really good care of him. She reached out to pick him up, but I smoothly moved between her and the counter. I politely asked her to be careful around the medical equipment. The mother's friendly demeanor started to crack slightly. She said I could surely see how much joy this little toy brought to her daughter. She questioned what I really needed it for, dismissing it just a stuffed animal. I responded in deliberately simple terms that yes, it was a stuffed animal and very useful for teaching. My basic response seemed to frustrate her further. She clearly expected me to understand their hints and offer the toy, but I wasn't about to give away an essential part of my practice. She argued that I could get another one since they sold these everywhere. I told her simply that this one worked very well for me. The daughter tried tears next, her lower lip trembling dramatically. She told her mother she really wanted the toy and asked if she couldn't ask the nice doctor if she could have him. The mother said she thought the doctor understood how much this meant to her daughter. Both of them stared at me expectantly, waiting for me to cave to the emotional manipulation. Instead, I handed them the cat carrier and the vaccination paperwork. I told them their cat was very healthy and asked them to schedule the next appointment at the front desk. The mother's mask finally slipped completely. She asked if I was serious and pointed out that her daughter had been nothing but polite. She couldn't believe I wouldn't spare one cheap toy and questioned what kind of person I was. I simply said that I was a veterinarian and this was a medical tool. She scoffed, calling it a stuffed animal from a furniture store. She said she knew exactly where I bought it because she had seen them there. I confirmed that yes, I had bought it for my practice. The daughter whined that she wanted it more than I did and that I didn't even play with it. Her mother called the whole situation ridiculous. She said they were paying customers and I couldn't even show basic kindness to a child. I remained calm and professional despite their escalating demands. I offered to give them information about where to purchase a similar toy. The mother insisted they didn't want a similar toy, they wanted that specific one. She said her daughter had already bonded with it. The absurdity of claiming her daughter had bonded with a medical demonstration tool during a 20-minute appointment would have been funny if they weren't being so aggressive about it. I explained that I understood, but the toy stayed here for medical demonstrations. She accused me of being completely unreasonable and asked what harm it would do to let her daughter have it. She pointed out that I could buy 10 more with what they were paying for this visit. I clarified that the toy was not for sale. The little girl shouted that I was mean and that she hated me. She started crying loudly, clearly hoping the tantrum would change my mind. The mother put her arm around her daughter and glared at me. She told me to look what I had done and accused me of breaking her daughter's heart over a piece of fabric and stuffing. I said I was sorry she was upset. The mother snapped that sorry wasn't good enough and called it terrible customer service. She threatened to leave reviews everywhere telling people how cruel I was to children. I told her that was her choice. I walked them to the front desk where my receptionist was waiting with their bill. The mother paid with sharp, angry movements while talking under her breath about foreigners and bad business practices. She announced that I shouldn't expect them to come back there ever again. I said I understood. When they were leaving, I heard the daughter whispering loudly to her mother about why I didn't just give the toy to her since she wanted it so much. Her mother replied that some people just didn't understand how to treat customers, but that they would find her an even better puppy somewhere else. After they left, my receptionist asked what that was all about. I explained they wanted my demonstration dog. She asked if they meant the one I used to show injection sites. I confirmed it was the same one. She asked if they had offered to pay for it. I told her no, they had hinted for 10 minutes that I should give it to them for free. My receptionist shook her head and laughed, saying some people had no shame. The next day, I found their review online just like the mother had threatened. It was a 1-star rating with a long paragraph about how I was cold and unprofessional and refused to show basic kindness to a child. She said I was clearly not suited to work with families and that my foreign attitude made the experience unpleasant. But the review backfired spectacularly. Other pet owners who had visited my clinic started leaving their own reviews, defending me and explaining how helpful my demonstration tool was during their visits. They described how I had used the toy to help them understand their pets' conditions and treatments. One review particularly made me smile. It explained that I used a stuffed dog to explain medical procedures, and it was incredibly helpful. The reviewer noted that any parent demanding that a medical professional give away their tools to entertain their child needed to reconsider their priorities. Within a week, the negative review was buried under dozens of positive ones from actual clients who appreciated my thorough explanations and professional service. My appointment book filled up with new clients who had read about my teaching methods and wanted to experience them for themselves. The entitled mother never returned, which was probably for the best. My demonstration dog still sits on the counter, slightly more worn but still doing his job perfectly. He's helped hundreds of pet owners understand their animals' health needs, which is exactly what I bought him for. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.